Hey there, welcome back. Tonight, we're taking a gentle stroll through history, not the kind with battles or crumbling empires, but one filled with soft fur, warm purring, and tiny paws padding through ancient homes. It's the history of pets. Before the internet gave us cat videos, and long before anyone thought to put a sweater on a dachshund, people still needed comfort. Real breathing company. Something with a tail, maybe a snort, and a habit of curling up right where you needed warmth the most. So, before we get cozy, take a moment to like the video. But only if you genuinely enjoy this kind of sleepy storytelling. And let me know in the comments when and where you're listening from. I always love seeing how far this little campfire reaches. Now, dim the lights. Maybe pull that blanket a little closer. Let the soft crackle of a fire fill the space around you. Let it warm the edges of your evening. And drift with me. Back in time. To a quieter world. Where animals didn't just work beside us. They slept beside us too. Let's start at the beginning. Long before cities, before temples, before even the idea of breakfast toast, there was a fire, and beside it, a human. Cold, probably, and very tired. And across from them, just out of reach, a curious wolf. It's hard to say when exactly wolves became dogs. It wasn't a single moment. There wasn't a treaty signed with paw prints. But slowly, over many winter nights, two species began to sit a little closer to the same fire. Early humans might have tossed a bone, maybe not on purpose. But that moment, that single casual toss, may have been the start of something incredible. Over thousands of years, wolves that were less aggressive, more curious, maybe just a little bit goofier, started sticking around. And humans didn't mind. Because warmth is better when shared. Eventually, they weren't just tolerated. They were companions, partners. And at night, when the stars were sharp in the sky and the world was too quiet, it was nice to hear a soft snore beside you, or feel a body curled up, warm and breathing, against your side. They weren't leashed. They weren't named Sir Waggington III, but they were loved, even then. Let's drift now into a land of golden sun, slow rivers, and quiet stone temples. We're in ancient Egypt, and here, the cats don't just chase mice. They guard the sacred. They purr in the presence of gods. Imagine the soft pads of feline feet slipping between columns, weaving through the silks of royalty, or curling on sun-warmed altars as incense drifts through the air. In ancient Egypt, cats weren't just companions. They were honored, adored, worshipped. To the Egyptians, the cat was both fierce and gentle, a mouse catcher and a moonlight guardian. They saw in her something divine. Bastet, the goddess of home, fertility, and women's secrets, had the head of a cat and the grace of dusk. She wasn't feared. She was welcomed, celebrated. Statues of her sat in households like little protectors. And yes, cats really did live in people's homes, not just temples or royal estates. Ordinary Egyptians welcomed cats for practical reasons. Keeping granaries clear, protecting their stores. But they quickly found themselves enchanted. These animals had personalities. They had opinions. They had favorite nap spots and quiet little quirks. Sometimes when night fell over the Nile and the wind cooled the stone, A cat might climb into bed beside a family member, not as a guard or servant, but simply as a friend. When a cat passed away, the mourning was deep and heartfelt. Families shaved their eyebrows as a sign of grief. They mummified their cats with care, wrapping them gently, placing tiny amulets and offering bowls nearby. Some were buried in special cemeteries, surrounded by other feline souls under the eternal Egyptian sky. So yes, cats were pets, but more than that. They were little symbols of serenity, creatures who moved with the rhythm of the divine, who slept beside our ancestors just as they curl up beside us today. Now let's ease westward, across the Mediterranean, where marble glows under the sun and the air hums with philosophy and figs. We've arrived in the ancient world of Greece and Rome. And here, animals weren't just pets. They were conversation partners, fashion statements, and sometimes slightly spoiled. In the winding streets of Athens, you might find a young philosopher in training sitting cross-legged under an olive tree, feeding crumbs to a bird perched boldly on his knee. Pet birds, especially songbirds and parrots, were common companions in ancient Greece. They added music to slow afternoons and kept lonely minds entertained with soft chirps and mimicry. Small dogs, too, became beloved lap companions, especially among women. These weren't the fierce guardians of earlier days, though those still existed. These were smaller, gentler, often doted-on animals with names and favorite spots on cushions. In Roman households, pets were part of daily life, woven into routines, rituals, and even art. Mosaics in Pompeii show dogs with alert ears and expressive eyes, often inscribed with messages like "Cave Canem," beware of dog. Though it's hard to feel threatened by a creature with such stubby legs and soulful eyes. And then there were monkeys. Yes, some wealthier Romans kept small monkeys, often tethered or perched near a window, peeking curiously at guests. Not everyone approved, of course. The philosophers grumbled. The poets made jokes. But the bond, it was real. Writers like Pliny the Elder and Plutarch mused about animal loyalty. They saw, even then, how pets mirrored their people, sharing moods, routines, even grief. A Roman might have mourned a dog as deeply as a friend, carving little epitaphs that whispered love across time. At night, the marble homes grew quiet. Oil lamps flickered low, and somewhere in the corner of a triclinium, a dog curled up at its owner's feet, maybe dreaming of sausages, or maybe just of being loved. Now we float softly eastward, past deserts and rivers, over mountains and mist, into lands where emperors walk in silken robes and temples hum with incense. Welcome to ancient Asia, where pets were often more than company. They were symbols. They were sacred. They were cherished. In ancient China, small dogs were bred not just to be cute, but to be carried, literally. Pekingese and Shih Tzus were favored in imperial courts, their silky coats brushed daily, their steps watched with affection. Some were believed to be miniature lions, guardians of royalty and spiritual harmony. They weren't meant to work or bark. They were meant to sit beside you while you wrote poetry, or fall asleep in your lap as you played the lute. Sometimes they had servants, yes, tiny dogs, with their own attendants, cushions embroidered with dragons, cloaks for cold days, even small palanquins to carry them in and out of courtyards. But their greatest gift? The quiet. They were calm companions in a world of duty and protocol, a living, breathing comfort at your side. Further south, in ancient India, elephants weren't exactly lap pets, but they were deeply loved. Temple elephants were cared for like kings, decorated with garlands, fed by hand, bathed slowly with songs and soft brushes. They were more than sacred animals. They were extensions of the divine, symbols of wisdom, memory, and strength. In Hinduism and Buddhism, stories abound of kind-hearted animals who protect, who teach, who guide souls toward better lives. Monkeys, birds, cows, each with a quiet purpose, a moment of connection with the human world. And in Japan, animals were often seen as spirit messengers. Foxes were mysterious. Cats could ward off evil. Birds carried meaning from season to season. And just like today, many slept beside the hearth, soft, steady, and present. Across these cultures, pets weren't just pets. They were elegance, tradition, warmth, and love in a quieter language. Now let's step into the soft gloom of the Middle Ages, a time when homes were dim, winters were harsh, and comfort came in the shape of anything warm that didn't mind being snuggled. Welcome to medieval life, where pets weren't pampered but deeply appreciated. Picture it: a small cottage, the roof thatched, the walls made of wattle and daub. Cold seeps through every gap, and the fire sputters in the hearth, doing its best. Inside, a family gathers close, and beside them, a dog. Maybe scruffy, maybe missing a tooth or two, but utterly loyal. Pets in medieval times were rarely ornamental. They worked. Cats guarded granaries and larders, keeping mice at bay. Dogs herded, watched, barked at strangers. But when the day was done, and the chores were too, they often climbed right into bed. Literally. It wasn't about indulgence. It was survival. A warm body in a freezing room was a gift. Children and animals slept together. Sometimes even the goat joined in. You didn't complain, unless the dog stole the blanket. Then it was war, soft, sleepy war. Even the nobility had pets. Lapdogs nestled in the cloaks of queens. Falcons sat perched near windows. Parrots were prized for their exotic chatter. But in the candlelit stillness of medieval evenings, pets did what they've always done best. They stayed close. They listened to whispered prayers. They curled around cold toes. They offered no judgment. Just breath. Just warmth. In monasteries, monks sometimes kept cats, not just for pest control, but for peace. There are poems from the 9th century praising their silent companionship. One monk wrote lovingly of his cat, who hunted while he read. A perfect balance. In a time when comfort was rare and nights were long, having a creature to huddle with meant everything. Now let's tread quietly into the sacred spaces between life and what comes after. A place of symbols, of silence, and soft goodbyes. Throughout history, pets have not only walked beside us, they've crossed into the unknown with us. In ancient tombs and graveyards, archaeologists often find them. Animal remains buried with care. Cats wrapped in linen, dogs laid gently at their owner's feet. Birds tucked inside tiny boxes, like folded letters to the beyond. These weren't just tokens. They were tributes. Parting gestures of love, The ancient Egyptians mummified pets with the same reverence as they did their people. Some animals had their own sarcophagi, tiny statues, inscriptions that read like lullabies carved in stone. In Greece and Rome, tombstones for pets weren't uncommon. A Roman once wrote, "I am in tears while carrying you to your last resting place, as much as I rejoiced when I brought you home in my arms." Grief is timeless. In Northern Europe, there are Viking graves where dogs were buried beside warriors. A final journey taken together. Maybe they guarded the soul. Maybe they just refused to be left behind. And in East Asian traditions, animals are often seen as reincarnated spirits or gentle messengers between realms. Cats, in particular, were thought to protect against wandering spirits. Birds carried souls upward. Elephants remembered lives before. Even today, we talk about pets waiting for us at the Rainbow Bridge. That idea of them being there just out of sight, still loyal, still patient, has roots that go deep, deep into ancient soil, into belief, into love. In the end, these creatures weren't just part of daily life. They were part of the soul's journey, the last companion, the first welcome. And now, we arrive back at the edge of the present. You lying in your bed, maybe with a pet nearby, curled at your feet, tucked against your side. Maybe not. Maybe it's just the memory of one. Either way, they're still with you. Because this story, the story of humans and their animals, has never really ended. It just changes shape. From fireside wolves to pampered palace dogs. From temple cats to apartment tabbies. The bond endures. Across oceans, empires, and generations, animals have walked with us, guarded us, made us laugh when the world felt heavy. Even now, in the hum of the modern world, that ancient comfort remains. The slow blink of a cat as you sip your tea, the soft sigh of a dog settling beside you after a long day, the curious tilt of a head when you speak out loud to no one, and they answer just by being near. We live in cities now, not caves, but some part of us still longs for that warm shape beside the fire, that quiet heartbeat beside our own. And they never stopped showing up. Not just as pets, but as companions in the truest sense. Silent, forgiving, funny, weird, beautiful creatures who chose, generation after generation, to stay. They don't ask for much. A bit of food, a quiet spot, your presence. And in return, they give everything: joy, comfort, the occasional shoe chewed to oblivion. Yes, but mostly just themselves, fully, without condition. So tonight, as you drift into sleep, maybe smile at that thought, that you are part of something old, something simple, something soft, a history of paws, of feathers, of whiskers and wagging tails, a story that goes on. Thanks for listening. If you're still awake, you're either incredibly relaxed or you really like ancient pet facts. Either way, I'm glad you're here. Don't forget to like the video, but only if you genuinely enjoyed this quiet little journey. And tell me in the comments when and where you're listening from. It's always so peaceful to see this small circle of calm we've created, spread across time zones and softly snoring pets. Now let your breath soften, let the fire crackle low, and rest easy, because you're not alone. Not now. Not ever.